When making a new project, it's very easy to think of all the ways it could go wrong and think of how many ways it maybe doesn't live up to your vision or just things don't work out how you want them to. And it's very easy to think of all the ways that you could fail. These feelings can often be overwhelming. It can often feel like whatever you do, something's going to end in failure, and the project is going to bring more pain and more hurt than it'll bring actual reward. This is a feeling that I have struggled with and am actively struggling with. The feeling of what happens if I fail? And it's hard to give an answer to how to fix this problem, right? This fear that we have, this anxiety that we have about creating, there's not an easy way to just get rid of it. It's kind of always there. The only way we can really get around it in a way or deal with it in any way is to just accept that failure is a part of the process. For me, I've found that a lot of the time this fear that I feel stems from the idea that whatever I'm making has to be better than whatever I've made before. And this can be very problematic when you do make something really good. When you finally craft a story and you make up a piece of art that you are incredibly proud of, well, then making the next thing has to be better than that. Or at least that's what I tell myself. And this can become very difficult on my brain because I'm like, the last thing I made was amazing. Where do I go? How do I get better than that? And it's a thought process that, at least for me, can literally lead me to a point of like not wanting to create the next thing out of fear of it being worse than the last. And there's a couple ways that I've found to deal with this problem. Number one, of course, is to just accept that you might fail and the next project might be worse, but that's entirely okay because that's how it is sometimes. I think as kind of goofy as that sounds, that's kind of just the reality of it. Sometimes you make something that's really good, and sometimes you make something that's not as good. I mean, everyone does it. The best directors in the world have bad movies and have bad projects. That happens. So adding that pressure onto yourself, adding that idea that somehow you always have to be better than your last project is unrealistic and very detrimental to your process and to making that next project. Now, the other thing I found sometimes it helps is just to make something completely different than your last project. Because when you can almost take away that comparison and say, this project that I've made is so different than the last, it can't really be compared one to one. My last two projects, The Doorway and Dreams, are perfect examples of this. I had this issue after I made chapter 4, and so I decided I'm going to make stuff that's different and I'm going to try and branch out. And what ended up happening is I made two completely unique films that kind of stretched my boundaries, taught me new things, and I was able to make stuff that ended up surpassing my other stuff, and I got better. And I still had those fears of like, is this going to be better than the last? But I was able to push those to the side and make the project because I could see how different it was and how unique it was. And I was like, ultimately, whether or not this is better, whatever that means, I've still done something different. I've still pushed my boundaries. I've still created something that was difficult, that was challenging, that was new. And so whether or not it was a success doesn't matter because I tried something new, I made something new, and I pushed my own abilities. Not to say that, I want to create excuses, but in a way, when you do push your boundaries and completely change what you do and how you do it and make something that is super unique, you can kind of look at it as like, if this fails, it's not entirely because my skill is bad, but because I'm doing something that is so far out of my comfort zone that, I mean, I was setting myself up for failure in a way because you're trying something that's so new, something that you don't fully understand yet, and it pushes you to a point of like, I literally was doing stuff that I had no idea how I was doing. I was figuring stuff out on the fly, and I was pushing my abilities so far that, yeah, I failed, and then that's obvious, and that's totally fine. That is part of learning. And all of this to say that those feelings that you have, that fear that you have about creating, that fear that you have about not living up to your own expectations is 100% normal. That is 100% totally normal. I have that. I struggle with that. There's no good way, there's no one way really of just dealing with it and getting past it. It's just one of those things that you have to understand that this is a feeling that is just a part of the process, and it's something that you have to just push past. And whatever way that is for you, for me personally, it's again, it's making something completely different, and it's just trying my best to kind of keep myself grounded and make sure that I don't overwhelm myself with this irrational idea of like everything has to be better, everything always has to be improving, I always have to be getting better and being better. Because ultimately, like, progress is not a straight line of like you are just slowly getting better. It's kind of like you're learning something and you're kind of bad at it at first, and then you learn how to do it. And there's always kind of that stage of like you think you're getting better, and then you learn a new thing, and you're like, oh my gosh, I know nothing about this thing. I am not as good as I thought I was. And then you learn that new thing, and then all of a sudden, now you know a new thing on top of everything you already knew, and now you're getting better. So there's kind of these like, progress and then setback, and then progress and then setback, and that's just kind of how it goes. But ultimately, over time, you're getting better. And I think that's another big thing to remind yourself of, is that over time, you are getting better, and all of the effort that you're putting in and all the things that you're doing, even though the growth may not be as much as you want, as long as you're getting better just a little bit. Again, just a little bit. That's all it takes. It'll compound over time, a little bit, day in and day out. It'll compound, you'll get better, and you'll be fine. With that being said, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye for now.